Assalamualaikum. Hi guys. We are going to learn about the new chapter, chapter 9, which is about carbonyl compounds. There are 3 subtopics in this chapter, so let's focus with the first one, 9.1, about introduction. In this part, you are going to learn how to state the general formula for aldehydes and ketones, and how to give the IUPAC nomenclature, and of course the drawing for the structural formula of aldehydes and ketones. First thing first, about carbonyl compounds, there is a specific functional group for both carbonyl compounds, aldehyde and ketone. They share the same functional group. We call it as carbonyl, and the structure for the functional group is C double bond O. So carbonyl compounds we divide into 2 parts. The first one aldehyde, the second one is ketone. For aldehyde and ketone, the difference is how you attach the alkyl group to the carbonyl carbon. For example, aldehyde you must have at least 1 hydrogen at the carbonyl carbon. But for ketone, both sides must be attached to alkyl group. Your alkyl group also can be aryl groups. In terms of reactivity, aldehyde is more reactive and easy to oxidize compared to ketone. This is what we are going to recap based on chapter 4, Introduction to Organic Chemistry. Aldehyde and ketones are isomeric. So what does it mean by this statement? Aldehydes and ketones are functional group isomer. So of course they are going to share the same general formula. And in general, as I mentioned before, aldehyde is more reactive. So towards the nucleophilic addition reaction, aldehyde can form more faster reactivity compared to ketone. And ketone it is less reactive because of the presence of alkyl group. So this is what we call as steric factor. While in aldehyde we got small hydrogen atom bonded to the carbonyl carbon. Now we go for the nomenclature of carbonyl compounds. Let's focus with aldehyde first. Step 1, as usual, just determine the parent chain where your longest carbon chain should contain carbonyl group. And then after that, the corresponding family name, let's say we have alkane, huruf E dekat hujung ni kita akan tukar dengan family name untuk aldehyde, dia akan jadi al. So alkanal. And then step number 3, if you got substituents, just put it as prefix. But you have to make sure that carbon yang ada double bond O mesti sentiasa the first position. So dia akan jadi sentiasa carbon number 1. Let's try example 1. What you have here is the carbonyl group. So automatically this one akan jadi first carbon. Okay. So bila dia jadi first carbon, kita ada 2 carbon ethane sebagai alkane. But right now it is aldehyde. So we are going to call it as ethanol. Next one. What I have here, this is my carbonyl groups. And then I'm going to label this one as the first carbon. This one second and the third. At the second carbon you got substituent methyl. So the name of this structure will be 2-methyl, and the parent with 3 carbon atoms for aldehyde, it will be propanol. Okay, very simple. For your information, there are several common names that you can use for the aldehyde. Let's say kita ada 1 carbon for aldehyde, kita akan panggil dia sebagai methanol. Ini IUPAC name, tapi another common name juga dikenali sebagai formaldehyde. For 2 carbon atoms for aldehyde, kita panggil ethanol. The common name is acetaldehyde. Untuk propanol, 3 carbon atoms for aldehyde. The other name is propionaldehyde. And then same goes for butanol, 4 carbon atoms for aldehyde. You got another common name. And then pentanol, 5 carbon atoms. And then you got phenylmethanol, the last one. This is where you have benzene ring attached to the carbonyl carbon. This is what I mentioned, carbonyl carbon. This is the IUPAC name because benzene as a substituent that we call it as alkyl group, and then the parent will be 1 carbon for aldehyde. That's why methanol. However, you got another common name for this structure is what you've learned so far in chapter benzene and its derivative. This is the structure for benzaldehyde. Next, we go for IUPAC nomenclature of ketone. So for ketone, is a bit different when you want to determine the parent chain for the ketone. You have to make sure you got the longest carbon chain, and the carbonyl carbon is not always at the first carbon. So you have to take a look at the carbon double bond O and position the number as lowest as you get. And then for the family name, huruf E dekat hujung alkane ni, E ni kita akan jadi on. So dia akan jadi alkanon. And then if you got the substituents, awak kena letak numbering for the substituents. Let's try a few examples from example 2. So right now you have this one. This structure kita ada 3 carbon atoms. So I'm going to give the numbering. This is first, second and third. And you got the carbonyl group in the middle at second carbon. So nama dia akan jadi 2-propanon. Or you can also write it down as propan-2-on. So both of them are acceptable. Next one, you have this structure. You got the carbonyl group in the middle. So I'm not going to give this carbon as the first one because I have to determine the parent chain with the longest carbon atom. So I'm going to start whether from the left or from the right. It's going to be the same because carbonyl group here will be at the third carbon. So I'm going to start from here, the first carbon, from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 5. So this is what we call as 3-pentanon because 5 carbon atoms for ketone. The other name that you can write it down also acceptable as pentan-3-on. So pastikan nama awak akan berakhir dengan family name dia, on. Kalau awak nak letak number dekat tengah-tengah huruf. And another name that you can write it down for B as well is what we call as diethyl ketone. So kenapa? Because we got the class of compound ketone, 2 alkyl groups here with 2 carbon atoms. Kita panggil dia ethyl sebab tu ada 2 di. So ada 3 nama yang awak boleh beri untuk structure B. All of them are acceptable. Next we go for structure C. Structure C, what you have here is ketone. I'm going to start from the lowest numbering for my carbonyl group. So I'm going to start from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 5. You got one substituents at carbon number 4, methyl. And then I'm going to write my naming for this structure. It started with 4-methyl. And then you got at second carbon the carbonyl group, -2-. And then this is pentanon because 5 carbon atoms for ketone. Next one, D. Structure D, this is a cyclic ketone. So when you have cyclic ketone, don't be afraid, just put the first carbon atom at the carbonyl carbon. But right now you got 2 of it, so I'm going to put either one. So let's say I start from here, 1, I'm going to go up because it's much more closer to the next carbonyl carbon. So go up, you will have 8 carbon atoms for this ring. And then, how do I want to give the name? I'm going to put cyclooctane for the cyclic form. And then, for the family name, because this is ketone, I'm going to separate by using the number in the middle of the words. But for this part, we have 2 carbonyl group, so it will be dione. And dione here, carbon double bond O is at the first carbon and fourth carbon. So you put dash 1, 4 dash. You put the final one, the family name will be dione. So this is the name for structure D. There are several common names as well for ketones. Let's say we have this structure. Sometimes they call it as propanon because untuk propanon memang sentiasa carbon double bond O dekat carbon yang tengah. So sometimes dia akan tulis sebagai propanon sahaja, tapi kita juga boleh anggap dia apabila kita beri nama untuk position of carbon double bond O, it will be 2-propanon because this is carbon 1, carbon 2 and carbon 3. So this carbonyl group is at the second carbon. The common name for 2-propanon is what we call as acetone. Next one, we have methyl ethyl ketone for the common name. This is for butanone because you got one alkyl group here is methyl and you got here is ethyl. So methyl ethyl ketone. Next one, you got 2-pentanone. This is methyl, this is propyl. So methyl propyl ketone. Next, I have diethyl ketone, the one that I mentioned before in the example 2. You have two alkyl groups both sides and then there are the same one which is ethyl. Next, we have aromatic ketone. So this is aromatic ketone that you have benzene ring directly attached to the carbonyl carbon with one alkyl group. So this is phenylethanone. Because right now your benzene is the substituent, so phenyl, and then you got 2 carbon atoms for your ketone. That's why ethanone. The other common name is what you've learned so far in chapter benzene and its derivative. You also call it as acetophenone or phenylmethyl ketone. This is phenyl, this is methyl, and then this is ketone. Last one, when you have 2 benzene ring attached to the carbonyl carbon in the middle, this is what we call as diphenylmethanone. So 2 benzene ring ni kita panggil dia sebagai phenyl sebab tu ada 2 di, and then 1 carbon in the middle, this is methanone. The other common name also benzophenone ataupun diphenyl ketone. Let's focus the last part of this video. This is how you want to draw the structure for aldehydes and ketones based on its IUPAC nomenclature. The first thing first, just determine the parent carbonyl compound. So the parent change for your carbonyl compound is either ketone or aldehyde based on the suffix. Kalau dia berakhir dengan al, itu adalah aldehyde. Kalau dia berakhir dengan on, itu adalah ketone. And then you go to the left one by one by drawing the substituents. So let's see example 3a. You have this structure, the parent will be ethanol. So this is aldehyde with 2 carbon atoms. So I'm going to draw 2 carbon atoms. Let's start with the first carbon, always carbonyl carbon because it is aldehyde attached to 1 hydrogen. And kita dah guna 1 carbon, and then we got 1 more carbon which is this one, and then dekat second carbon kita ada phenyl. So buat bond dulu, attach kepada benzene ring. This is your phenyl. And then this carbon belum cukup bond, kita akan tambahlah 2 hydrogen. So semua carbon ada 4 bonds. Next one, kita go to the structure B. You have butanol as the parent. So butanol is aldehyde with 4 carbon atoms. So I'm going to draw 4 carbon atoms. This is my skeletal structure. And then at the first carbon, always the carbonyl carbon. So this carbonyl carbon, I'm going to put double bond O. I'm going to draw the skeletal structure, so I will not show the hydrogen atom. And then to the left, we have 3 hydroxy. This is OH group attached to the third carbon. And then we have 2 ethyl, which is 2 carbon atoms as a substituent. So I got this structure. Next one, we have hexanol as our parent. So hexanol is 6 carbon atoms. For aldehyde, I'm going to draw 6 of it. And I give the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. At the first carbon, always the carbonyl carbon. And then if you want to draw with hydrogen attached to it, it doesn't matter. And then next to the third carbon, you have cyclopentyl. This is cyclic form as a substituent with 5 carbon atoms. So I'm going to draw at carbon number 3 and then 5 carbon atoms in the ring. So this is cyclopentyl. And then at carbon number 4, we have Br, bromo. So settle for structure C. Now we go for structure D. We have the parent is pentan 2-on. So this is ketone. So draw 5 carbon atoms for the parent, pentan. So I got 5 carbon atoms. And then give the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the second carbon, we have double bond O. So put the double bond O at the second carbon. Next one, go to the left, you have 1-cyclobutyl. Again, cyclic ring as a substituents with 4 carbon atoms. Put the bond first, baru you draw 4 carbon atoms. Like this one. So settle for structure B. For the next structure, kita ada structure E. Cyclohexanon is our parent. This is ketone with 1 carbonyl carbon. So I'm going to draw 6 carbon atoms for cyclohexa. And then you got at the first carbon, this is double bond O. And then you give the numbering. At 5th carbon you got methyl, and at the 3rd carbon you got isopropyl, kaki ayam. So settle for structure E. Next one, kita ada hex-4-in-3-on. Quite complicated, but take a look carefully. Apabila awak ada 4-in, ini merujuk kepada alkene. And this alkene, you got double bond. So bila double bond, awak nak letak antara carbon nombor berapa? Carbon number 4 and carbon number 5. Okay, next one. Kita ada 3-on. So this 3-on merujuk kepada awak punya ketone. This is the position of carbon double bond O, which is at the 3rd carbon. So I'm going to draw my structure. The main one is hex. Hex means 6 carbon atoms, and then you got 6 carbon atoms. And then after that, at carbon number 3 you got double bond O, and then draw the double bond, and then O at carbon number 3. And then at carbon number 4 and 5, you share the double bond between those carbon. So you got your structure for F. Very simple, kena tahu baca. Next one, I have dione, and then go towards, kita ada 2,4, and then this is for pentan. So this is our parent. So kita draw dulu 5 carbon atoms for your ketone. Give the numbering. And then at the second carbon, you have double bond O, and at the 4th carbon as well. That's why dione. And then at the first carbon and 5th carbon, put the bond attached to Br. So settle for structure G. Next one, kita ada but-3-enal. So ini family name dia adalah aldehyde sebab dia berakhir dengan al. Dan aldehyde ini ada 4 carbon, tapi dekat tengah-tengah aldehyde kita ada in. In ini dekat position carbon number 3. Apa maksud dia? Dia merujuk kepada double bond. So carbon-carbon double bond ini antara carbon number 3 dan carbon number 4. Kita tak boleh cakap dia antara carbon number 4 and 5. Kita tak boleh cakap dia antara carbon number 2 and 3 sebab 3 is the lowest one, next to it mesti carbon yang lebih tinggi nilai dia, iaitu carbon number 4. So how am I going to draw this one? Kita draw dulu aldehyde with 4 carbon atoms. So I'm going to draw this one. So let's say give the numbering. You got 4 carbon atoms. At the first carbon, aldehyde mesti sentiasa carbon double bond O, and then you have hydrogen. And then at carbon number 3 and 4, you got double bond. So this is structure for H. Let's go for the last two. We have dione 1,3, and then hexan. Jangan lupa perkataan cyclo dekat depan. So this is cyclic ketone. And then let's draw cyclohexane first with 6 carbon atoms. And then at the first carbon and the 3rd carbon, you have double bond O. This is ketone. So if you give the numbering, this is how your structure looks like. And then after that, at the 5th carbon, you have CH3, which is methyl. And last structure, you got the parent is 2-heptanon. Hepta means 7 carbon atoms. So draw 7 carbon atoms. Give the numbering. And then at the second carbon, you got double bond O. So this is our ketone, 2-heptanon. And then at the third carbon you have propyl. So propyl means that you got alkyl group with 3 carbon atoms. So I'm going to start CH2, CH2, put a stop, end it with CH3. So you got structure J. So settle for the first subtopic, the introduction of carbonyl compounds. You've learned so far the introduction to the ketone and aldehyde, how to give the name for them, and how to draw the structural formula for them. I hope you can try to do the tutorial question, and that's it from me. I will see you in the next video. Bye!